The other day there was a fight between two analysts from a Brazilian TV when they defended different approaches to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In fact, when we hear specialists in international relations explaining the conflict, it is common to hear them talking about this theory.
Do you know what the realist theory of international relations is?
No? Shall we go to class today? At the outset I will tell you that realist theory is too complex and far-reaching for a short lecture like this to be satisfactorily explained. It would take a whole course and it would not be possible to exhaust the theme. Second, realist theory is not a homogeneous block and has undergone changes over time.
This points to different realist schools.
That said, I will try to synthesize the theme even in an arbitrary way, but in my view it gives you the conditions to really know what analysts are talking about when they use this theory to comment on the war in newspapers, on television, or even in documentaries on the social networks. For realists, one of the first contributions to understanding conflicts from a realist perspective would have been made by Thucydides in ancient Greece, when analyzing the Peloponnesian War. It is from the reflections of Thucydides that the denomination of international anarchy would later arise, inspired by the anarchic society of Hobbes.
Calm down, I'll explain.
For Thucydides, in the world, the powerful do what they have the power to do, while the weak simply accept what they have to accept. It reflects on how this thought can help to understand contemporary conflicts. Well, if this is true, it means that there is no normative system capable of putting this mess in order. That's where Hobbes comes in. For Hobbes, at the beginning of man's life on the planet, there were neither laws nor state. It was what was called the state of nature. At that moment in human life, there was a war of all against all, an anarchic society. This state of nature would only be overcome, according to Hobbes, when men, giving up their freedom, ended up creating an institution that was autonomous and strong enough to promote security among men. But what does Hobbes' theory have with realistic analysis? For the realists, in a kind of analogy, the states would be individuals that do not know limits except in their own powers. This situation makes international society an anarchic society in which states use their power in the same way that individuals in Hobbes' theory used their muscles to do what their muscles allowed, and the weak, to use Thucydides' reasoning, accepted what they would have to accept. You might be wondering, what about the United Nations? It is an interstate organization, therefore it is a representation of the states and not a separate entity that has the power to impose a universal, just, equitable, free will from the pressure of the strongest. We could give an example of how this strength of states guides their actions even with the existence of the United Nations. I don't know if you know, but war is prohibited under international law. This can only happen under two very specific circumstances. Do you know what they are?
That's right, you got it right.
In self-defense and authorized by the United Nations Security Council based on Chapter 7 of the San Francisco Charter. Okay, do you remember the Iraq War that overthrew Saddam Hussein? It was not authorized by the United Nations. That's right, it was an illegal war. What was the punishment that the United States suffered for this crime against international law? Think of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which punishes individuals in states for the crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against honor and crimes of aggression. I ask you, what is the origin of the majority of those convicted by the ICC to this day? The African continent. I do not mean by this that the condemned do not deserve it, but that other important statesmen have committed the crimes under the theme justice of the court, but remain undisturbed. What to say about Guantanamo or the denunciations about the actions of great powers in Syria or Iraq? Here I'm not criticizing or defending anything. I'm just giving an example of what realists mean by anarchic society. It is based on this observation that they make their cold but realistic analyses of the international situation. For example, when a state is nuclear armed, is it viewed or treated in the same way as other states? Of course not. This finding is also part of the realistic analysis. Machiavelli's thought also contributes to realist theory. At this point, the survival of the state stands out in a dialogue with Thucydides. He also highlights the low relevance of moral values in guiding the actions of the states. For realist thinking, security is the goal of the state, and to ensure that security, the state would make alliances or use the balance of power. For them, Machiavelli dealt with the real world and not with the ideal world. That is, his analyses were based on what the world was, not what the world should be. As heterogeneous as the realist theory may be, some common points can be identified, among them the centrality of the state that seeks to guarantee its survival at all costs, using power to guarantee this. This power can be used individually, in what they call self-help, or through alliances with other states, always with the objective of guaranteeing their survival. For the realist analysis, domestic aspects are of little importance. What matters are the states and their relationships.
They treat states like billiard balls, which act rationally, so the analyst's goal is to understand the rationality of the state's actions to use its scarce power resources in pursuit of the national interest. That's it. I hope this video was useful for you.
If you liked it, leave a comment, say what you think, give it a like. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. If you want to know my courses, I left the links here in the video description, in case you are interested.
Okay guys, big hug.